Hey, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, how are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Nice. How far away from Panama City are you?
Oh gosh, I just went through Vernon, so I'm another hour away, I guess.
Okay,
So should have plenty of time.
nice. Well, yeah, thanks for going over to Maymay's. I think that call went well. It was a lot of good information we got.
Good.
So yeah, I think my mom might want to just call her once or uh, one or two more times just to get a few more stories. But yeah, that's a lot of really good stuff. And
That'd be
then
great. She will answer the phone if it's available to her close by.
okay,
But a lot of times she'll have to turn around and call back.
okay,
But
nice.
anyway,
Well, yeah, today, like I said, yeah, last time it just you and I spoke, you went over all of your mother's uh, uncles and aunts and cousins, and so yeah, the only thing that we lack is just more detail, kind of on each sibling, and so yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, you basically start at the oldest, and then you kind of work your way down, talking to because some of these people I think I have had met when I was 10 years old, but I didn't really realize who they were. And
yeah,
so if we can just put a little more context to um, each of the siblings. But yeah, if you want to just kind of start off with Jack and then work your way down.
yeah, that'd be fine. Of course, he was the oldest, and but only about I think 13 months older than Sam. And both of them were born when Grandmother Vann and Granddaddy Vann lived across the railroad tracks. I think they lived on North Railroad Street actually, but somebody can correct me on that. The rest of them were born in the house that they bought from a Mr. Covington. Um, he was owned a business in Dothan, and that house was at 105 or 107. You know what the address is? I don't know for sure.
West Church Street.
West Church Street, and it backed up to the property that our Granddaddy Woods, uh, had left to Annie Crump and to Kate Woods Brannon, and who we call Pap and Mama Kate. And it was in Pap's name, I guess, because back in the day they didn't put land like that in a woman's name, maybe. Because I know Pap didn't buy it; he had to inherit it. And I feel like the way it happened was that the Woods, Willie Woods, when he moved out to the farm on the west side of town, where he spent the rest of his life on about 400 acres of land, he sold or gave his house that he was living in to Annie, the youngest child. And I guess he gave whatever land was left that he hadn't already sold to other people to Mama Kate, and it was put in Pap's name. So that's where 105 is situated. So that we lived at 102 Forest Street. Pap lived at 108 Forest Street. Both of which properties backed up to that same Woods farm, 2 or 3 acres, all it was left. But anyway, that's for setting purposes. Jack, I don't think Jack was ever in the service. He had some kind of an ailment with one of his arms. It was a gimpy arm, a birth defect. I don't think it was an injury. He was a small statured guy, more the shape and size, I think, of Granddaddy Vann, who was not a big man, not real short either, but he was average or less average height, and he was left-handed. For Jack was he was they tried to get him to college when he finished high school. And they did. He was the first one of them, and really the only one for a while that went to college. But he went to Auburn, and he I'm not sure what he studied. I know during the time he was there, excuse me, he became a football manager. Helped do whatever was needed for equipment and that sort of thing with the football team. So he had some connections in the athletic department from early in his life, and a love for Auburn football and a hate for all of Auburn's opponents, like all the team did back in the day, I guess. But when he finished at Auburn, I'm not sure what his degree was in, but he did finish, and he got a job in civil service at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery. And I guess that's why he moved to Montgomery when he got out of Auburn. Don't know exactly how he met his wife. Her name was Florence Armstrong, and I'm not sure where she was from, but they married, of course, and lived in Montgomery in an apartment that I used to go and visit them whenever my mom and dad would go to Montgomery for any reason or farther north. They would always stop and visit with Jack and Florence in their apartment. And, of course, Jackie was born, I guess, in about 1943. I was born in 41. I'm about 2 years older, I think, than Jackie, that is. And then they had later Dick and Carol, twins. And I don't know whether they knew from the beginning that Carol was deficient in something or whether they found out later, but she was. She had a learning disability, maybe. It really wasn't so much that as physical inabilities to, her eyes were bad, her ears were bad. She could speak fairly well, and she was an intelligent person, but she had some shortcomings. Never learned to drive. Dick seemed to get all of the whatever genes that you get for that kind of thing, and she maybe got none, if that's the way twins work. But anyhow, Carol wound up getting a job at the library, took the bus to work every day, and enjoyed it. She didn't have that job all of her life, but I'm sure Uncle Jack wrangled it somehow. But she performed well. She was close to her dad, and he was a studious type himself. He played bridge every day at his work, he would tell us. He and some of his buddies, when they took a break for lunch, they were more interested in playing bridge than they were eating, according to Mama. And he was a fanatic about that and a good bridge player. And he also was invested heavily, I'd say, for him in the stock market. And Carol picked up on that. And so he and Carol had that as a relationship. And all of their lives. And Carol, that's all she talked about. She would tell, when she would come to Headland, she would talk to her aunts and uncles and cousins about what they had bought last week and how good it was doing and how much money they had made and all that kind of thing. And I don't really know the details or how much of that might have been exaggeration, but she got a lot out of it, and that was a wonderful thing for her and for Uncle Jack. Florence was a nice lady, I guess. She sort of reminded me of Emily Ezel in appearance, and she had children like Mama and Edith and Emily, and all about the same time. And they were always comparing what their kids could do. Sometimes it sounded like a competition about how well their children were doing in school and this, that, and the other. That's what they would talk about. Jackie was an okay cousin coming along. I didn't spend that much time with him, but he did okay. I guess he went to Auburn and finished, and I don't know what his degree was, but he wound up managing medical practices, one or two or more, I would say, in his career. And he didn't have a lot of success financially. He would lean on his daddy pretty hard for help whenever he got into a problem, and that was sort of a discussion a lot of the time when people were talking about what Jack was doing. But he lived in Florida for a while, South Florida, didn't marry for a long time, and eventually did, but he was in a practice or managing a practice for some doctors in Florida, when I think they had some kind of big financial blow up, and Uncle Jack had to spend a good bit of money to help him get out of that. At one point in his career, I believe, if he was not the financial manager, he would have been close to that at the Ochsner Clinic in New Orleans, which is a well-known hospital, and so I guess he knew what he was doing. But and later on, he married a girl named, I can't think of her first name now, but she had previously been married and had a couple of kids and lived in Atlanta, and she and Jack hit it off, and she would come to the Thanksgiving Vann family reunions on a regular basis. They didn't have any children together, but and Jack didn't adopt the other kids. They were well to do, and she had a nice house up in northwest Atlanta that they lived in for a long time, and different ones would visit when they would go to Atlanta. I never did spend the night with them, but I did go by the house a time or two and visit. She died, I'd say, in the last 10 years, maybe, and I think left Jack the house. So I think that's where he still lives. And he works at Walmart or someplace like that on a pretty regular basis. He's had some health problems. He's pontificates is the best word I can think of on all manners of Trump and politics, and seems to know way more about that than I do, and perhaps not as much as he thinks he does, but he can talk about it a lot and knows everything, about it. And let's see, back to Jack. He was a wonderful uncle, just like all of them were. When one of my jobs was working at the Department of Housing and Urban Development in Birmingham. After I had gone through several other jobs earlier, I got a job with HUD in Birmingham, and the program that I was managing was a community development block grant program, which is still around. Reagan reorganized it when he was president and passed it on to, or allowed states to pick up that grant-making process rather than the federal government doing it. And at that time, that's what I was doing. So I had to do something. And the first thing I did was HUD loaned me to the state of Alabama. And HUD continued to pay my salary, but I moved to Montgomery, where Jack lived and where the headquarters of the state government is, and help them. My charge was to help them get acclimated to the program and develop the skills in their staff that could manage the program, which was, in our case, something like $80 million a year that was granted to Alabama. And the division was based on population and the degree of low and moderate income people that you had in the state. But anyway, that was about the size of our grant program, and all local communities could apply for funds to carry out community improvements, from water systems to sewer systems to housing rehab to other programs to assist primarily low and moderate income people, which is a defined term, and everybody's not eligible for it. And back in the day, it was mostly black people who benefited from those programs, and therefore the racist whites, the hard right conservatives were always bitching about, the money was tax money and it ought to be divided more equally, and yet our charge as an agency distributing the money was to review all the applications and pick the best ones, and part of the criteria was the degree to which the community was serving their low and moderate income population. And they got much more favorable scoring on the system of determining which ones to pick than otherwise. Of course, at the time, Mayor Emory Farmer was mayor of Montgomery, and he was kind of hard right. He didn't like me, and I didn't like him, but that's a whole different story. That's what I was doing in Montgomery. And Uncle Jack, Linda and I had just married not too long before then, and Libba was born in Birmingham, and I was traveling, doing that job with the state. I had to be there most of the time, so I was literally gone during the week and come home on the weekends. And Linda decided that we would be better off living somewhere else. So in Birmingham, we moved to Montgomery. And Uncle Jack was as gracious as you could be. He came every day over to our house. And, of course, I went to work, but Libba was there with her new baby and didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. And Uncle Jack was very helpful with any and everything we needed. I got to know him more, I think, than I would have otherwise gotten to know him because of that. We later moved to Dothan for the same reason, because I couldn't seem to stay in Montgomery. I was working all over the state. Anyway, after I left the HUD arrangement, after 2 years, they no longer paid the state or paid me for working in the state. And I had to go back to Atlanta or quit. And I quit and took a job with George Wallace Jr., who was the treasurer of Alabama, had just been elected, and I worked for him for the next 8 years. And he served 2 terms. But anyway, Uncle Jack, I can't think of anything else to say about him except he told you about the football manager thing. They went to a bowl. I think the first bowl game that Auburn ever played in was something like the Cane Juice Bowl or something like that in Havana, Cuba. And Uncle Jack said he went to it as the manager somewhere around 1938 or 39, maybe.
Yeah.
Somebody can look it up.
Yeah, I've got an article from December 3rd, 1936 that says, and it is in the Wiregrass Farmer, and it says, Jack Vann travels 12,000 miles in 1936.
Good. Well, you got the facts in, and all I've got is just a poor memory.
Yeah, it mentions he returns from Cuba after New Year's.
Wow. I stayed down there a while, didn't I?
Yeah, it says he's a senior at Auburn in 1936 and manager of the track team. Spent Thanksgiving with his mother, Mrs. Sam Vann. And then as track manager, he traveled with the Auburn football team on all their trips this fall, having gone to San Francisco and Detroit, and will have had 12,000 miles of travel with the team and returns from Cuba after New Year's.
Wow, I'm sure he told me all that, but I didn't remember those details.
Yeah, he said, it said they will leave December 26th, going and returning via Miami with a week in Havana following the New Year's game with Villanova in Havana.
Damn, that's great. I went to the Orange Bowl in '63. I'd already graduated, but my team went to the Orange Bowl, and we stayed down there a few days. That was it. Anyway, that's interesting. And that was Uncle Jack. He really was connected to the program, and over the years he tried to know all the coaches. And when I got to be a prospective football player, Auburn wasn't interested in me at all, but Georgia was, and several others were. And Uncle Jack supposedly talked to his friend, Mr. I can't even think of the guy's name now, but he was closely connected to the athletic people, and he lived in Montgomery and was a neighbor of Uncle Jack's. And the story I got was that somebody called Petrie, I think was his name, Peavy, P-E-A-V-Y, Mr. Peavy. And Uncle Jack called him and said, if y'all don't look at this boy, Georgia's going to sign him. And he comes from an Auburn family, and you need to go look at him. And they knew who I was, I guess, because they did send somebody down shortly after that, started recruiting me, and about, I don't know, halfway through the season, they offered me a scholarship, and I took it, and so I didn't do any more recruiting. If I had that to do again, I not only would go to Troy or some smaller school that maybe I could play at, but I would wait until the end of the year to commit. But I committed early, and that's another story altogether. But anyway, Uncle Jack was influential there. He always was concerned about how I was doing, and as he was with everybody, all of his nephews. And he was interesting to talk to when he would come to those Thanksgiving things. And he I don't know how old he was when he died, but he, of course, was buried back in Headlands. Or maybe relocated there. I don't know whether they buried him somewhere else and then moved him. But anyway, his body is in the Headland Methodist Cemetery now.
And so is he the origin? I know you said he loved to play bridge. Is he kind of the origin of your mother playing bridge a lot?
I don't know. Possibly. I know that they played, and Edith and Emily and a lot of people in Headland played back then, and everywhere, I guess. More so than they do now because of all the other distractions. But I don't know whether he was or not. And he was a good one, though, and he could tell you what to do and what not to do pretty quickly. I never played that much bridge with him, but he knew a lot about it.
So I haven't played bridge before. I've played hearts and spades. What is?
Yeah.
How would you compare bridge to other card games?
Way more complicated and way more requires a lot more strategy. And hearts is similar to hearts and spades in that you bid for a contract to make so many tricks. And 6 tricks is book, and you bid up from there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. If you bid 7, that means you're going to take them all. And if you bid a grand slam, and you'd say you could get all the tricks, and the little slam was 6 out of 7, and the way that the bridge was played back in the day was more party bridge, where it was more talking and enjoyment and that kind of stuff. And there was not scores were kept, but it was a different scoring system than the kind of bridge that is more complicated, that is duplicate bridge, where you join an association and you actually get sent decks or boards that have pre-dealt hands, and local bridge clubs, duplicate bridge clubs, play those hands, and the one that scores best, and they rotate around the room, in a group of people, and so that everybody would play every one of those hands, and I say every one, almost all of them, and then you could calculate who did best with the hand, that particular hand, and that's the way they played. And the Vanns never played that. They may have played a little bit in a bridge club somewhere out of town, but we didn't have one in Headland that played duplicate bridge, except for a few tournaments at the Porch House. When we had that, we organized open duplicate tournaments for local folks, and some of them knew how to play, and some of them didn't know how to play, and so it was kind of a mixed bag. Some were interested and some were not in that that level of bridge. But I guess that's my comment. It's supposed to be very good for people who are becoming forgetful. It helps stimulate your brain, and I love it. I still play some duplicate bridge with a friend of mine, lady friend, that has a partner, but the partner doesn't is not always available, and she would call me when that happens, and I try to join in and play duplicate with her in Dothan at the Catholic Church with about 20 other people.
And how much when your mother and Jack are playing bridge at your parents' house, how much are they putting on each of these games?
Money-wise?
Yeah.
No, they weren't playing for money. They just played for the score. In party bridge, you play for, you win. The scoring is that a game is 100 points, and if you bid, you can bid game with every hand you have if you think you can make it, and if you do make it, you score more than if you bid something less than game. In other words, game to get 100 points, you have to bid 4 spades or 4 hearts, and that's 120. If you bid 4 clubs or diamonds, they only count 20 apiece, so that would only be 80 if you made it. Even if you made more than that, you didn't bid more than that, so you wouldn't get but 80 points. Then you get a little bit for making an extra trick, and when you do get to 100, and you would deal the second time at the same table, if you would deal until somebody won 2 games, and that's called a rubber. And once the rubber is won by one of the couples, you play as a team, not as an individual. Party bridge, and sometimes they would play at each table. Somebody would have to win 2 rubbers, and then they would rotate and move to another table, depending on how many you had in your little bridge party. Sometimes they would have 2 or 3 tables. At the Porch House, we would have 4 or 5 tables every Wednesday night. And some days we wouldn't have but 3, but you never know in situations like that. But that's about all I know about bridge.
Okay, and
Linda learned how to play. I mean, all of our family plays. Sid and Alicia would come to Dothan after Linda and I moved from Montgomery to a rental house in Dothan, waiting for Pap's house to get rehabilitated. We bought it from the VA. And had to rehabilitate and lived in Dothan. Until then, Sid and Alicia would come down there more than one night a week sometimes and play party bridge, whatnot.
Okay, and then is Jack the one that made a lot of pound cake when he was older?
No, that was Sam.
Okay.
I think Jack did maybe cook something, but Sam was the one, for whatever reason, started making these pound cakes. After he made several hundred of them and gave them away, he started keeping records, and I think he went back and caught himself up on an estimated basis how many he had done before then. But then I'm sure you've got articles about how many he made during his lifetime, and he would just take them to people that he thought would enjoy them, and they were in Dothan or had them, happy. It didn't matter to him. He did that for a long time, and he liked to draw attention to himself, and he did draw a lot doing that, and certainly was a good thing to do, a generous thing to do. I always ask him, why the hell we never got one? And here we are, relatives, and then a couple of weeks later, he would say, okay, I got one, come over here and get it. That would be one that had fallen in the oven, it was all cracked up, and it turned out that was the best kind for me. It had a sad streak in it. And so, you know what a sad streak is?
I don't.
Yeah, it's a streak in a cake, in a pound cake. It's supposed to be uniform, and it is if you buy a store-bought one. But if you make them at home, and you get a little bit too much butter or a little bit too much sugar or whatever, it'll have a streak in it that actually is tastier than the rest of the cake around it. And I always loved to get one with a sad streak, but Mine also didn't look too hot. He wound up giving us more than one in his lifetime, but all of them were something less than his quality product. But, he served, Uncle Sam served in this service, and he stepped in when Granddaddy Vann died, and I guess because Jack was off at school, but he became the boss, and his sisters talked about him very reverently. I mean, they loved him. They loved the fact that he just stepped in and done all those things for them and for their mother. And those of us who were old enough to discuss things like that, Mark, Jack, Sam, not Sam the third, Wayne, would talk about how they must have made some kind of a pact that nobody was going to leave Grandmother Vann living by themselves, because Uncle Sam was dating Fran Mallett. He dated other women around in Headland here and there, but he really only had one solid girlfriend, and that was Fran. And hell, they didn't get married till in the 40s, and Sam the third, I think, was born when his mama was 43 or 4 years old or something like that, which they say, is not a good thing to do, or they did back then. He didn't get married until Jim got out of the service and came back to live with Grandmother Vann, and we always thought that was sort of a pact that they had made with each other, that they were not going to let her live alone. Kate Hedley grew up and got married, and Mary Owens did the same thing, and so there wasn't anybody to stay. Mama was close by, and Emily was close by, and Edith was close by, but nobody lived with her, and they wanted somebody there all the time. So that's what they did. And he got a lot of credit for that, maybe more than he was due, but he got a lot of credit. He also was, I give him credit for hiring my daddy at Solomon Motor Company. He was already working at Solomon Motor Company when Daddy went through his little thing with the hardware for 5 years. It didn't work out, and I don't know whether that was before or after the hardware, to tell you the truth, but I know that he worked at Solomon Motor Company as a used car salesman, and so did Uncle Sam. They all became part of that little clique down there. Louis Oppert and the people that owned the Solomon Motor Company were named Solomon, but no relation, or at least no close relation to Grandmother Vann's Solomon family. Anyway, they owned it. And Louis Oppert, I think, was maybe the sales manager, and Uncle Sam maybe it was the used car sales manager. I'm not sure about all that, but I know they hired Daddy, and he was a very good salesman, and he was glad to have a job, and we were glad for him to have one. And then and Uncle Sam would have been helpful in that. They worked together for a long time, and then I guess Edith, there was an opening at the Headland National Bank, and Uncle Sam was hired and later became cashier and then president when Major died, because even though Mark was however old, you calculate that, he was old enough to step in. Major had stepped into the bank when his daddy died in a car wreck, I think when he was 25 years old or something like that, in maybe 1933 or something like that, and had taken over the bank and did very well with it. And when Major died, I think Edith felt like that Mark was not quite mature enough yet, and he wasn't. And so that's how Uncle Sam got to be president of the bank. And either because banking is a real good business, or he was a real good manager, or whatever, Headland was growing. The bank did very well during his tenure as chairman, as president and chairman. And of course, Edith was on the board, and I think Mark worked there at the bank. As soon as he got out of Auburn, I don't think he ever did anything else but work at the bank. And but Uncle Sam was his boss, and Mark was all Auburn and overboard like Dr. Vann was, and silly about things and carefree because he was wealthy, and I guess they just figured he wasn't ready to make the hard decisions that you have to make in a bank situation. And so that went on until Mark got old enough and mature enough or whatever to take over, and he did. And Uncle Sam remained chairman, I think, until he died. Maybe not, but he continued. He acquired a good bit of bank stock. I know that during his tenure, and so when he died, little Sam, I think, maybe is the biggest stockholder in the bank now because of that. And his mother, Sam III's mother, was had a job, with the Home Extension Service at Auburn University all of her working career, and would have done very well at that financially. So anyway, when they died, Sam.
What do you know about Sam Vann's military experience? Just
as a child, reading every letter that he sent, and which weren't that many, but he did send some, and hearing every letter that got sent to him, which were bunches from all of his sisters about what was going on in Headland. And he had a good career. I guess what was his top rank? Was it lieutenant, or is captain higher than lieutenant?
Yeah, I see something where a newspaper article that he was a lieutenant, but I'm not sure if he was a captain or. Yeah, I don't know.
First lieutenant. Dr. Vann was a captain at one time. He had a different. He had two different careers in the Army and the Air Force, but. We'll get to that later, I guess. Uncle Sam was strictly Army, and he was a platoon leader, or maybe a group bigger than that. I know nothing about the military, but I know that they had gatherings every year for a long time when they all got older, and Sam and Fran would go, and little Sam would go, and sometimes they'd take others. I never went, but I think Jim might have gone with him one time, and Sid may have gone with him one time. But anyway, they all were reverent to Lieutenant Vann. And he was not a hero of any sort. I don't know that he got any great recognition for what he did, but I guess maybe he got a lot of his authoritarianism that way, and he was always barking orders at me and others. Mainly Wayne and me, because we were the only ones old enough to build a damn fence. They were renting the Vann property, all of the pasture property, for their cattle operation, Brannon Vann Cattle Company. And the flunkies were Wayne Brannon and Sam Brannon. We're the ones that had to do whatever hard work there was. And Uncle Sam would be out there supervising whenever he could break away from his job at the car dealership or whoever he was working for at the time. He was kind of the supervisor.
I'm looking at an article that said that Sam Vann awarded Bronze Star Medal for maintaining a supply line in Italy at a time when fighting was at its bitterest peak.
Great. Well, great. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was recognized for that, but he had a great military career. It did him a lot of good, and it obviously did the country a lot of good. So he was worth the respect that most people had for him. He learned from Major Espy how to be a banker, and I'm not sure that's the best teacher in the world, but it was. If you owned all the bank, it was the best. It was the best policy because he didn't take many risks. And therefore the bank was never a big money earner compared to other banks. But it has lately become an earner, a better earner than that. But that's where Uncle Sam learned how to run that bank, and Major was very involved in it, and Uncle Sam was too. I don't think they made any loans that didn't get very careful consideration and make sure that they were meeting all the requirements of the national bank standards. They were audited by the national bank system, national banking. I don't know what the name of the agency is, Department of Treasury, I guess, to make sure that they were following bank rules. And then later along, I think after Major's death, everybody concluded that they were better off being a state bank, because the feds would come down to do a bank examination and you'd have to pay for it. And they'd stay forever. They'd look at every damn loan you made and you'd look at just unusual amounts of time, and everybody thought that the bank was getting screwed. So what they did was to dissolve the national bank and create a state bank, HNB First, a corporation that's a holding company that owns a bank, I guess, and they gave whoever owned all the shares, a different number of shares in the new HNB First thing. And that's when Daddy, I may have told you earlier, traded a herd of Limousin cattle to Bruce Shelley, and what he got in pay was Bruce's shares of Headland National Bank, which he had acquired because he had an interest in the other bank that merged with Headland National Bank when they had the bank holiday back in 1933, I guess. Right after the Depression, the Farmers and Merchants Bank had to fold into the Headland National Bank, and so whoever owned stock in the Farmers and Merchants, which were mainly Solomons, not the Kate Solomons, but Gibb Solomon, Gilbert Solomon, and Pete Solomon and Carey Solomon and all those, and a bunch of Shelleys in Tumleton, and that's how Bruce got the stock. Anyway, Daddy wound up with it. When he died, he left Wayne 10 shares, me 10 shares, and Sid 10 shares, and Wayne didn't want his, and so I bought his. That's more than you want to know about the bank, I'm sure.
No, that's good. But yeah,
but anyway, Uncle Sam was there during that, and then when he retired as chairman, Mark took over, and when Mark died, Marilyn had a bigger role. Marilyn always had a big role in it, and she was on the board, as was Billy Woods, who's Mila's husband, and Mila died, And so there was always plenty of SB influence. I was always under the impression that the SB's owned about 85% of the bank, and then the rest of it was owned by the Vanns or the Solomons or the Shelleys or whoever owned, share over the years. And then when when all the ESPYs died, left the money to their children, I don't know where they still, I want to think they sold some bank stock to other people. But because I think Sam III is a big stockholder now. And I could be wrong about that. But anyway, that's Uncle Sam. He was a taskmaster. I felt like he loved all of us. He certainly did everything he could for us, but it always came with a lot of barking and a lot of instruction.
Seems like his military experience was pretty heavily influential on him, on his personality.
I guess so. Yeah, he was tough, and then he had a friend. Fran lived in the house. Doctor, I can't even think of the doctor's name, but Dr. Turner. Fran, as many people did, school teachers and educators back in the day, instead of having their own apartment, they would live in an apartment in a house somewhere. And somehow Fran, during their courtship, before their courtship, hers and Uncle Sam's, got in with Dr. Turner and was living with him in an apartment. And so Sam got to know Dr. Turner, and I don't think he had any children. He was a surgeon. I don't even know what kind of doctor he was in Dothan, but he was a well-to-do doctor, all I know, money-wise. And and Uncle Sam, I guess just because they became friends, became sort of his caretaker. And after he had time when he was at the bank, And even before he quit the bank, he would go down there in the mornings and do things for Dr. Turner and take him this or take him that. And then when Dr. Turner died, he was the executor of the will, which turned out to be a pretty valuable spot to be in. Not only did he get paid $250,000 or something like that for his services up to date, but he and Fran were recipients of a variety of things in Dr. Turner's will, and that helped his financial status. So that when he died, when Uncle Sam died, he was a well-to-do fellow, and so little Sam, being the only child, and his mother was too. So he'd done better than me and Wayne and Sid and Ezel and all the rest of them in terms of financial resources. But was a good man. I don't think there's any doubt he was a good man. And,
did he ever go to college?
Not to my knowledge. He probably, I'm sure he went to some of those banking schools. When even the young boys or girls that come along in banks, they get sent to schools that are organized by the American Bankers Association and or state bankers associations, and it's pretty specific learning, but it's comparable to college.
And
I had to do some of that when I graduated from Auburn. I didn't know what I was going to do. I had gone to pre-dental school, started in pre-dental school because that's what Uncle Jim told me to do. And when I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that lasted about a year and a half. And we went up to the University of, whatever they call it, UAB, I guess is what they call it now. And met with the dean of the dental school, and he said, "Mr. Brannon, it looks like you either need to play football or go to dental school. You obviously can't do both." So I got the message, and I was not doing well. I had a cast on my left arm for one semester, and I had algebra and something else that semester, and I had to do it left-handed because my right shoulder was in a cast from my waist up. All that. Plus, it turns out I wasn't all that great a football player anyway. It takes you about 50 years to admit that.
Were you just getting bruised up at practice pretty bad?
Yes. Auburn, had won the national championship in 1957 and were undefeated in 1958. Georgia Tech tied them, and I got there in 59, and we went 7-3. The varsity did. I played on the freshman team at that point. And you would have thought that we had committed a crime or something because the coaches had beat the hell out of us. And I think they did it all over the SEC. That was about the time that Bear Bryant came back into the conference from Texas A&M, and he played a different way. He wanted smaller, quicker people that would knock your butt off, and he was for finding out who could play and who couldn't, and who was a man and who wasn't. And all of a sudden, everybody in the SEC had to start doing that, or they couldn't beat him, and didn't beat him anyway. He outdid us all. But anyhow, that was just at a time when practice was a lot rougher, and we didn't have water. I don't know why in the world that was. Somebody hadn't realized that you need water in that situation, but they would either try to run you off or make a man out of you. And in my case, they crippled me. I don't know whether I became a man or not, but I managed to stay there 4 years, so I was glad of that. I was not a very big contributor. And once I got my shoulder knocked out of joint and it broke the top bone off of it, and they had to put a pin in it, I never played another down, and never even practiced much after that. And of course, by that time I was doing well in school. I had switched out of dentistry into general business and was doing well, and so they let me stay on the last 2 quarters, I guess it was, or maybe it was 3 quarters. without having to even practice. I just helped out in the new dorm. They moved from Grave Center cottages into the first dormitory that was built, Sewell Hall, and it's been torn down in my lifetime. So that's what makes you feel old. You're old enough to see a building get built and torn down at Auburn. But anyway, I have arrived down here at Dr. Vann's cabin, and Zach doesn't even know I'm coming.
Okay.
I mean, he knows I'm coming, but he doesn't know I'm here yet. I don't think.
All right, well, let's go. We got a lot of good stuff on Jack, a lot of good on Sam, and see, I'll call you another day, and we'll start with Edith.
Great, thank you, Logan. Good to talk to you.
All right, have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.